I'd like to open the meeting, this special meeting of June 29th, and if I could ask everyone to please stand. The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we have Esperanza Villegas here to do the translation. So if you want to come up, Esperanza, and make an announcement en español, and we'll be good to go.
Okay. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Esperanza Villegas y esta noche estoy aquí para traducir en español. Si usted necesita alguna ayuda, venga a verme, estoy en la parte trasera de esta sala. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. And if anyone needs a headset, we have headsets available to assist anyone with hearing difficulties. And public comment, I don't think we have any sheets. And also, there was no agenda item for reporting out closed session action. So I will report it out, and I assume it will be added to the agenda. Item B1, liability claim, the claimant Eric Winter, a claim against the Santa Barbara School Districts. There was a motion by Ms. Malakoff, a second by, as Ms. Parker and Dr. Noel joined us right after that, a motion to settle the liability claim. Okay. Was approved. So now we are on to our action agenda. Item D1, approval of tentative agreement between the Santa Barbara School District and the California School Employees Association for the 07-08 school year. And Ms. Alvarado, sure.
Thank you, board members. I'm here again to bring back the tentative agreement that I reviewed with you on Tuesday night as a conference item. And again, we are reviewing and approving tonight the agreement for the 07-08 school year, which, as I pointed out last time, is probably one of the earliest we've settled on an agreement with classified in the district. And I'll just review the items once again that are part of the agreement, which is a 3% effective July 1. Health and welfare benefits, where we now have an agreed upon insurance program for the 07-08 school year with Blue Shield, maintaining the HMO 1 plans and 2 plan, introducing a catastrophic plan, and grandfathering and maintaining a PPO plan for current employees. In addition, the agreement reviews promotions and hiring procedures that we will continue negotiations and discussing protocols for hiring with classified positions. So I'm here to address any other questions you may have.
Thanks, Ms. Alvarado. Questions from board members? Okay, a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
So a motion by Ms. Cordero and a second by Ms. Malakoff. Any further questions? Okay, vote. All those in favor of approving the tentative agreement between the Santa Barbara School District and the California School Employees Association for the 07-08 school year signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item is approval of agreement for financial services between Dale Scott and Company and the Santa Barbara School Districts. Mr. Diaz?
Yes, Madam President. This agreement is the contract for services between Dale Scott and Company and the Santa Barbara School Districts for financial advisory services with regards to the general obligation bond refunding and possible other refunding instruments that, or not refunding instruments, but other debt instruments that the district may or may not pursue in the near future. It is these no general fund impact. The cost of any of his services will always come out of the closing costs, if you will, of the financing.
Any other questions for Mr. Diaz? We've been through this a number of times. A motion, perhaps?
Move to approve. Second.
So a motion by Ms. Cordero, second by Ms. Malakoff. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? None. passes 5-0. The agreement for financial services with Dale Scott and Company has been approved. And now we are on to the main event, the approval of 07, well, we don't know, the presentation of the 07-08 budget for adoption and 06-07 estimated actuals. Mr. Diaz?
Yes, good evening. The document which we are presenting, which I am presenting to you this evening, is the budget for adoption, since it hasn't been adopted yet, and the estimated actuals for the 06-07 school year. The first, just for the public's viewing audience, is a brief overview of the budget development process, how it starts with the beginning in California when the governor presents his budget. It's revised in May to reflect any changes based on tax returns that have come in, and then the budget, state final budget is due at the end of June. However, at this date is still not complete in Sacramento. The unaudited actual revenues and expenditures for 06-07 will present to the board, and the scheduled completion for our 06-07's books is August 15th, 2007. The unaudited actuals will be presented in December in this district. I believe it's December 15th that we present those. And then if there's any changes to the state budget, of course, we will come back to the board within 45 days with any changes that may be included with his budget. And again, this budget is based on the best data we have as of the May revise and the information from our financial system as of June 25th, 2007. Included in this budget, I have a slide called Included in the Budget, What's Not in the Budget, and then some spreadsheets for you. But I wanted to briefly review what we have included in this budget is $2.5 million in budget reductions that the board made in April of 2007. Another $2 million in budget reductions that the business staff made during the account review, account analysis that took place in the last month or so that we've gone through. We've 1% increase to the employer cap. We've created a $934,000 reserve for our GASB 45 liability. For further explanation of that, that is the district's liability for post-employment, they call it other post-employment benefits. And it is going to be a requirement of the Government Accounting Standards Board, GASB, GASB 45 statement that says entities, both for-profit and nonprofit, will have to begin recognizing their long-term unfunded retirement costs. The district has not been in the circumstances to put money aside for that. We have at this budget put an installment in there. That $934,000 actually represents what our total obligation would be amortized over 30 years. This budget includes the step and column increases for all staff. The revenue projections are based on continuing declining enrollment. The staffing was synchronized to position control and personnel through the budget. Our revenue estimates are very conservative. We don't have any, we haven't set up an accounts receivable for our MAW money, nor have we for mandated costs, because both of those amounts are questionable, and when they're paid to us is even more questionable. So we don't put them on our books. We book that revenue when the checks come in. We've included a 1.5 estimated increase for the property taxes, and there's been a slight decrease in our workers' compensation rates based on an improved experience modification. So those are the items that we have included in this budget. And really the lion's share of the analysis, of course, would come from this item, bullet number 2. The staff took volumes of time to go line by line through every section of the budget to find things that, for instance, had been budgeted in prior years but had rollover budgets. You've heard me refer to rolling expenses forward from one year to the next. We've done some of that this year, but not very much, a very small amount. We've gone through and looked at every single line item and budgeted an appropriate expense. However, that leads us to my second slide. You can't ever guess at every single expense that you're going to have. So what isn't included in this budget is the impact of any final accounting adjustments when we close our books, any changes resulting from the final state budget, final school site and districts realities. I think Robin can tell you, as a former principal, stuff happens out at school sites and in the district that you can't possibly budget for. And so if some of those things come up, the district will have to pay for them, but there's no way really to estimate those. However, we have provided in the components of components of ending balance do show a reserve for future contingencies. This does not include any unknown personnel changes or other possible first interim adjustments, the costs of any contracts or agreements made outside of the business office, costs of any site or locally funded position. We don't have a specific line item accrual for our vacation pay, but that's about $200,000. We haven't set up receivables for MAW or mandated cost, as I mentioned in the previous slide. And it is our intention that our categorical program final expenditures will be determined by first interim. In other words, this year we will want to be in a position from an information standpoint so that Assistant Superintendent Sawaski and Assistant Superintendent Turnbull can know exactly what their categorical programs are going to be spending for the rest of the year, and we won't have the kind of the annual scramble that has taken place in the past to identify what monies are available and get them spent. So I think that's going to be improved. We haven't set up revenue receivables for local donations, and we don't show any 06-07 categorical carryover expenditures as part of this budget.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
Going back, the first item, when does that happen?
The closing of the books has to be complete by August 15th. And I would say that any adjustments that would be resulting from the closings of the books, I can present them to the board in September as soon as we know what they are. It'll be some time till we know what exact adjustments. The way, according to our staff, we don't anticipate anything wildly different than what you're going to see tonight. So, but if there isn't any items of significance, I'll be happy to provide it to you in a board brief at that time.
Just one more quick question about the included, not included.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming that we are adequately covered for increases in utilities?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes. Both of those pages could have been several pages longer, and because, yes, all of those things we have included some inflation on consumables, the paper, the gasoline, those types of things. What we haven't included is the impact on a couple of cost analyses that I'm conducting right now. One is with the utility cost, and one is with telecommunications. And I can share with you at this point that we've identified, as of this week, almost $100,000 in potential savings in that area. And so those haven't been included either until we get the final number. That won't be available till sometime in the fall. We're editing every phone bill, every light bill, every gas bill, every water bill, line by line. We have hired a firm to do this for us. We split the proceeds with them, and it's going to yield some money, some real money.
I wondered if I could get you to go back. 2.0 million plus, rather, million in additional budget reductions by business staff. Have we seen those as a board?
Maybe budget reductions isn't the right terminology, Dr. Noel. I should have said as a result of account analysis. A lot of those, that a lion's share of that money comes from if you would roll budgets forward and you had money budgeted in one year, but there was no expenditure, well, then you would eliminate that expenditure out of the next year's budget. So a lot of that 2 million had to do with prior rollover budgeted amounts that weren't spent. However, we did do some reductions to contracted services, and I didn't, no, sir, I did not bring them to the board. We made them under my direction in the accounting department. There isn't any large item that equals 2 million. This is a bunch of smaller adjustments.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Okay, now Dave, can we, this is, here is the, I hope I couldn't get this to get any bigger on my computer. It just won't get any larger. But what we have here, I know the board has a packet in front of them, but I'm hoping for the viewing audience at home. Just hit escape, yeah. Yeah, just show, yeah. Okay. There you go. There you go. That's one of the reasons we've ordered you a new computer, Mr. Hatyunk, this one here. We're experiencing just a temporary delay and technical difficulties here. We could get some. Well, let's, okay, you know what, let's just go with what we have here. What we've done here is identified, as we know, we have 2 school districts, so what I wanted to show the board is the separate ending balances from each district and then a combined ending balance, reflecting the changes from the second interim to the new budget. And then, of course, these changes here, here's the changes in revenues of 109,000, which are explained below, and I'll walk you through those items. And then here's the changes in expenditures of 1,148,000, which are identified below. With regards to the expenditures, our revenue, we had a slight increase to our revenue limit, 288,143. I know that's probably hard for the viewing audience at home to see, but this will be on our website on Monday. We'll put this on our website on Monday, and I will make sure that we have a copy that is more legible on the website. I apologize for that. A slight reduction in federal revenues, mandated cost reimbursement that we budgeted for, that actually is what we're going to get. That's an amount that we have in the bank, or will soon be in the bank. We reduced a MAW receivable, which we had been carrying on our books. Just out of an, I wouldn't call it an abundance of caution, but we needed to reduce that amount. It was too high. And then we've reduced by 488,000 what previously was budgeted in prior years as local donations. We have had the practice of budgeting for local donations, but I wanted to have a more, you don't know about local donations. So rather than budget for them, we'd rather leave them blank and book them to revenue as they appear. As far as the expenditure side, again, this being the elementary district, we've had increases in step and column for for our teachers of $1,091,000. We have a reduction in sub-costs, we're of 90,000. Reduction in hourly teachers of 223. Increase in classified salaries for step and column. A reduction in employee benefits as a result of fewer staff members. A carryover money that was spent, $901,000 in carryover money that was spent. 34,000 less in books and supplies. 590,000 lower in contracted services, mainly consultants, and we went through agreements to make sure that we're not eliminating anything that the district's going to need, but we viewed those closely and were able to reduce that amount by 590,000. And Dr. Noel, all of these amounts, as we see, those are part of that $2 million question that you asked about these different amounts. How did we reach that amount? They're all intertwined through the budget. And then we have lower capital outlay of 335,000, and then higher indirect cost for a total of $1,418,000. So we've decreased our revenues by $109,000, and we've decreased the expenditures by $1,418,000. Again, this being the elementary district.
Can I ask a question? Excuse me, can I ask a question? This highlights the differences between last year's budget and this one's, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you say under expenditures, the net increase in certificated salaries due to step and column, I mean, you also have a difference when people retire and so forth.
It's the net of all.
Oh, so that's the
Yes.
net of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, these sheets could be much longer and show many more items. We try to, for the sake of presentation, I wanted to keep it on one sheet, but we have all of these numbers are backed up in the budget document itself. All of those items appear in our financial system and are available for review, of course. And going on to the high school district, this one came through a little better. Again, the same methodology was used. Well, a reduction in revenue, a reduction in expense, a breakdown in those numbers below. Again, we have a slight increase to the revenue limit, 780,000, 779,000. A net increase in federal revenue, reduction in other state revenues. And just show you that we have put MAW and mandated costs, as we've taken those out, separate line items down here. So we tried to give a clearer picture of the revenue. State revenues have decreased. The mandated cost reimbursement was not budgeted in 07-08, so we took that out. And then projected MAW, we took that out. Again, I referred to these in the slide, that what is not included in the budget. And then we took the donations out. We reduced them by a significant amount because we're not sure of our donations when they do come in. And then with regards to expenditures, step and column increases for both classified and teacher staff, a reduction in benefits, a large reduction in expenditures, primarily resulting from the fact that there are no 06-07 carryover expenditures built into this budget. Oftentimes, school district budgets will appear to be in deficit spending when in fact it is simply the carryover from the prior year's categorical expenditures, where you have more expenditures without offsetting revenues. So it's not really deficit spending, but you should spend your categorical monies in the year it's received per the law. And then we've reduced other services, the contracted services, capital outlay. This kind of gives you, on the right-hand side, it tells you a little bit more breakdown. For instance, with the capital outlay, we will have $500,000 less ADA upgrades to do. We'll have $2,000 less track upgrades at Dos Pueblos High School, 110,000 less servers for Aries. Those get you close to those numbers. The lower services and operating expenditures, you see the contracted services, 449,000 budgeted less for mileage, travel, and all of those related types of expenditures, for a total of $4,971,000 in the high school reductions.
Can I ask a question again?
Yes, ma'am.
It's interesting to look at the differences between the elementary and the secondary. I'm just curious about the difference in that one I just mentioned was the salaries due to step and column, that in the elementary it's $1 million, and in the secondary it's only $270,000. Could you maybe just explain that?
That is the number that came out of our system. I can provide you a further analysis in a board brief of that if you would like. I couldn't
No,
tell you right off
please.
the top of my head here
Oh, okay.
what that represents, but I know that there were less, there was less column and movement in the teacher's schedules than there were in the classified, and so that was a lower figure. But I can get you more, a better breakdown of that number. And that was primarily just, that was step and column for that. Okay, our combined ending balances. Again, we go over, what you see now are the combination of the previous two slides, everything coming together. We have reduced our expenditures by 6.3 million, and we've adjusted our revenue downward to 2 million, by 2 million. Again, the revenue limit increases, the reduction of MAW, state revenue, mandated costs, reducing a projection MAW revenue quite a bit, and again, the local lower donations, same items that appeared on the previous two slides, just added together. Again, the increase in salaries, step and column by both classified and certificated, and reduction sub costs, excuse me, hourly teacher salaries, step and column for classified, lower employee benefits, lower carryover from 06, 07 into 07, 08, none of those expenditures. Again, the operating cost, consulting contracts, lower capital outlay, and higher indirect costs. So we've reduced a lot of expenditures taken out of the 07, 08 budget, and this, I would characterize this as kind of a best case scenario. This is a budget built in the accounting department, but as I said in the slide that's not included in the budget, things will come up. Things will come up in the school year that we can't possibly plan for. We do have contingents reserves for it, but there's no way to spread that to a budget account right at this time. And again, if there's any questions with regards to a specific item, I can give you as much detail as you would like in a board brief item. That will be a public document to you. I just don't have those. I don't have those journals and financial statements in front of me this evening.
I have a quick question, Mr. Diaz.
Madam.
Where you have under expenditures, reduction, third line down, reduction in hourly teacher salaries, and you have that figure, and then you have what's the $1 million and something figure
That's just the
next to it?
sum of these three. That
Oh,
was a
okay,
check. That
okay.
was a check number.
Okay, thank you.
These three add up to that.
Okay.
I should have taken that out of there.
No, that's it.
So the budget reductions, let's see, hold on here. I wanted to, before we move on, I wanted to emphasize that we have met all of our reserves. Where is my slide on the ending balances? Okay. We have met, the good news with our budget is there's three major points. And I know these are a lot of numbers and there's a lot more explanation that everybody would like to see tonight and have tonight. But the three important things to remember about this year's budget is, one, mainly, we finished the year with a positive cash position in the general fund. Two, and more significantly, there was no inter-fund borrowing of any kind to support the general fund. Three, most significant of all, of course, no inter-district transfers of any kind. And four, a healthy $4 million reserve for future contingencies. And I'm going to kick myself in the pants here because that slide is on my computer. And I'd be happy if the board would like to recess and give me a couple seconds. I can print that out and bring it back over to you.
It's different than the reserve for economic uncertainty?
Yes, sir. I don't know if you have that in your packet, but I don't, I have it on my computer. I don't see it in this.
This slide right here?
Yes.
No, we have that.
Do you have that?
No, I think he has,
No,
a-
I'm
he has,
talking
an- he has
about one that
another one.
shows
Do you have
there's-
something that
yes.
shows very specifically the reserve
Yes,
situation?
yes, I do.
And
I would like to
actually,
see
I would
that.
like to see it very
If
much.
you would mind just taking a 5-minute recess, I'll be right back.
Let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay,
Thanks.
I'll be right
Okay.
back. Okay.
We are back from our break, and Mr. Diaz was good to his word. It's only been 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. And I apologize for the delay. This has been an eventful project with many exciting moments. And we'll leave it at that. This slide, actually, this is like the actual worksheet that I didn't include in my presentation. This shows us the ending balances of the districts and the combined ending balance. Of course, the elementary district has a 3% reserve. Secondary has a 3% reserve. Combined, they meet a 3% reserve for both the budgeted, projected to end this year and into the budget year, the coming budget year. We have our traditional components of the ending balance, which is your revolving cash, your inventory of those types of things, and then your categorically restricted balances. Those are always part of our budget. What we do have new for 07-08, or actually we started it at second interim of 06-07. We set money away. We need to set some money away for some future commitments and some of these unknowns that I was talking about. The problem with this district in the past is we haven't had reserves to get us through tight times. And although these don't represent a lot of money, it's a positive first step to satisfying that $18 million liability that we have to face here in the district, that $934,000. We've put aside $100,000 for technology development, and that would come to you from Dr. Hayden's department, Dr. Davis's department, in a form of a plan that the board would approve. Only the board can spend these monies. This is money that you guys, that are our reserves.
Actually, that was my question. I realize that you've put the monies into particular categories, but at some point in the very near future, we need to get this back to either make a decision that this is where we want the monies to go.
Correct.
Or that we want to spend them a little bit differently, with some recommendations, of course, from you.
Absolutely, Madam President. And these are not, these are not decisions that are made in the business department. The arithmetic was done there, and creating the option for the board to spend the monies as it sees fit. And I just put those in those categories for the time being to represent items that I knew were outstanding commitments. It doesn't mean that those are going to be the specific areas that they have to be spent in. Of course, that's at the board's discretion. But the point is, we are showing a, I would say, I would call this a Goldilocks budget. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just sort of in the middle. I think if we go back to the slides in PowerPoint about the items that were not included in the budget, I think you can see that there's a considerable sum that could come up that we would have to use these reserves for. But the important thing to remember is you won't be using your reserve for economic uncertainties for them as you have in the past. So you now have a set aside, if you will. I call it a passbook savings account with not very much money in it, but it's better than using our reserves. It's important for the public and the staff board to know the businesses refer to their burn rate, and that is the amount of cash that they go through each month. And we have a $120 million budget, and we have, therefore, a burn rate of about $10 million every month throughout the year. So a reserve of $4.5 million is not quite half a month's operating, and it's not quite one full. A payroll is about $7 million. So it looks and sounds like a lot of money, and it is. But in terms of the entire budget, it's still a small sum. It would be our goal to increase our reserve for economic uncertainties from 3% to 5%. I know we've heard discussions from the board throughout the year at one time or another that would be a desirable attribute to have in our budget, and I couldn't agree more. But I think it's going to take time. We're going to have a good year this year in terms of managing our money, in terms of working together with departments. Already, Assistant Superintendent Sawaski and Turnbull, we've already had some discussions on how frequently we should meet to review the expenditures that are going out on the school sites. Dr. Robertson's office, Elaine and Ann Peak were very valuable in helping us go line by line through every single one of our employees, 1,800 some employees, to make sure that every item was budgeted correctly for. So some things were done in this budget that have not been done in a while here.
Can I just ask, the 3%, which figure represents the 3%? Okay.
The reserve for economic uncertainties.
Okay. And so everything else is above that?
Yes, ma'am.
And these,
Dr. Noel?
so I should put reserve for in front of each of those. Reserve for GASB, reserve for technology,
Yes, sir.
repair and replacement,
Yes.
reserve for future commitments and
Ye-
encroachments,
Yes, sir.
Reserve for other designations.
Yes, sir.
Could you explain what that one means?
That was the,
Sounds like a blank check. What's it
No,
mean?
it's not a blank check, Dr. Noel. Where is that? I have, hold on, let me go back to my office. I'll be right back. I have.
No, you don't
I
need
have-
to.
it
It's
doesn't-
here.
it-
It's
It's
not
in
in
the
a
0607 column, but it's not in the 0708
Yes.
column.
Because these were the beginnings of these.
Got it, okay.
Okay.
Okay,
We started at second interim telling you we were going to put some money aside. We did. And we hadn't identified it this specifically, and these became these. So that's what you have there.
So they were a reserve for the reserves.
Well, they're the same, they are, yes, they are part of the reserve, yes, they would carry forward.
Thank you.
Okay, Dave, back to the PowerPoint. Okay, I'll do it here. Okay. A summary of our budget. Of course, the reductions that have been made have had a positive impact on the finances. Our ending balance includes 3% reserves for both elementary and high school district, a positive ending cash balance. I believe the number is near $4 million of positive cash. No interfund borrowing, no transfer of monies between the districts. A TRAN is in place for the state delay of the final 06-07 apportionment. What the public and board may not be aware of is the state of California has adopted a method of balancing its budget by putting its last house payment of the year forward 1 month. And that house payment is the apportionment to the school district. So this is our final apportionment that we would normally receive this month. They delay it until after their July 1st. So we have to have money aside for that, and we do. We have a TRAN in place to provide the cash for that. We have reserves, and I did use that word here, Dr. Noel, in the slide. I didn't have it over on the spreadsheet. But reserve for future encroachments and commitments. The technology, the GASB. This year we'll have a heightened budget monitoring process. I'm putting together measures and steps for interdepartment cooperation, interdepartment sharing of information, working together. It's just too important to not have that constant flow of communication to know what's going on, as everything has a budget impact in this district. We need to make sure we're on top of it. Nutrition services is going to operate, and I'm not saying a restaurant chain, but the philosophy, the working mindset of our folks, we want them to feel like we're operating a restaurant chain with student customers. So we want to compete. We want to serve good food. We want to make the kids excited about coming into the cafeterias, and I know that there are other initiatives throughout the district that are going on. We're in support of all that, but doggone it, lunchtime should be a fun time for kids, and they should have something good to eat, and that's a big priority for us this year. And Dave has done a good job working with Frank and his people that report to him in food service, so I'm encouraged at what I see. Also, the accounting staff at food service are going to produce monthly profit and loss statements, much like we would do in my previous job here in Santa Barbara for a major restaurant chain. We would have to produce an operating statement at the end of each month for each unit, and if somebody's in trouble or running a higher cost or something, that will come up very quickly, and we'll be able to address that. Less of an institutional approach to management, if you will.
What is the estimated encroachment for nutrition services in this budget?
I think it's 189, 170. It's in Fund 13. It's on your page. It would be in Fund 13.
What fund is
But
it?
Fund 13, Dr. Noel. But in fairness to the nutrition services, there's also a Meals for Needy revenue limit adjustment of $400,000 that should go into Fund 13, but we haven't been putting it there.
Where does it go?
Stays in the general fund. It has needed to stay in the general fund the last several years due to our circumstances.
So we should be giving it to food services, but we're
At-
spending it on something else?
Well, we're spending it on general education of our students, Dr. Noel, is what we've had to spend it on.
Something else.
Yes, sir. I would say to you, and I don't know with how much
So all I'm saying is that, so it's still,
in the black.
I understand what you're saying. but-
Yeah, the food service department's in the black. If we were to put
Wait a minute, you just said it was a $180,000 encroachment.
Yes, sir. If we put the
We're not
$424,000,
putting it back.
I know, but at some point in the future, we are going to.
But in this budget, is it back or is it not?
It is not in this budget.
Okay, so.
My
so
intention
in
is
this
to-
budget, there's a $180,000 encroachment from food services, correct or not?
You could say that. You could say that. I wouldn't characterize it as an encroachment. I would say there's a temporary deficit of 100 and some thousand, whatever that number is,
Well,
with an identified source of repayment. And if our finances are able at first interim, we'll make that adjustment and move a portion of that money over there to eliminate that
I want
deficit.
to ask you about these reserves as long as I have the mic. Are there any of these new reserves for site level expenditures?
All these reserves are at the board's discretion, Dr. Noel, so they can be allocated at the board's at the board's
Well,
direction.
but they're all earmarked.
No, those are just words, sentences that I put on a line for right now. They're,
Why don't we call them then just reserves for contingencies,
well,
rather than saying what?
I wanted to identify
These
some.
documents take on a life of their own.
I understand, Dr. Well, but I wanted to identify some areas where our auditors, where the county office, where some of our financial, overseers have identified certain areas in the past.
Well, $100,000 for a new technology, all at the district center. I can think of some principals who
No,
would lick their chops for that.
That isn't money for the district center.
Oh, I thought you said it
No,
was.
sir. No, that's money for the districts at the board's discretion. That could go where you tell us to put it.
I thought I missed
Not earmarked for anything.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Parker.
I wanted to say that I very much appreciate your conservative approach. And I also appreciate the fact that you're looking towards building reserves for future commitments and encroachments. I am concerned, though, that in April, when this board cut $2.5 million, it was really intended to simply make that 3% reserve for economic uncertainties. And now we're suddenly in this position, and I am so impressed that your staff managed to find $2 million through cost analysis or account analysis. I would consider that $2 million in savings rather than $2 million in cuts.
Well, yeah, reductions in expenditures
Yeah.
is the proper terminology.
But we are suddenly in a position where we have over $4.5 million in sort of extra reserves
Well,
that need direction. And I want to be sure that we are giving direction on that as soon as possible.
To answer your, if I may, Ms. Parker, I would wait for two important events that will happen soon with regards to the determination of those monies. I submitted the data files for our budget to the county offices a day ago, and they will do a thorough review, and if there's something not right, we will hear about it post haste. The second event would be the closing process when we close our books in August and find out what adjustments may be coming out of these monies. So before we make that determination, the board makes that determination, I will want to have provided you with the thorough analysis that the county provides of our budget, and also the entries that would be made at first interim. There'll be expenses that show up in your September and October payroll that we haven't budgeted for. So,
But $4.5 million is a fair amount. We could do a lot for our upcoming school year for things that we've cut without getting anywhere near that $4.5 million. It just seems like an enormous reserve.
that's at the board's discretion, of course. So I would just offer you that comment as your chief financial officer. It would be more comforting, I think, and I don't know comforting to who, you're the board or myself, but if I was to get a clean bill of health from the county and a good closing and a first interim, and if that $4.5 million is still there at first interim, I would say by all means. I would caution spending it before that time. It's almost like spending the money in your checkbook before you reconcile it with the bank. That would be an analogy I would use.
I don't hear Mrs. Parker saying
And
she
I'm not
wants to
saying
spend it.
I don't want to spend $4.5 million.
No, I understand, ma'am.
But I also realize if we wait till first interim and after the school year has started, then we will miss out, children will miss out on a
Okay.
year of programs.
These are good problems to have. So again, it is at the board's direction and discretion how to spend these monies, and we will take direction from you on how to do so. So,
I wanted to ask
Well,
about, I'm sorry.
I was just going to follow up on that really quickly, that given that the board cut $2.5 million, and then there were additional reductions of $2 million, I was hoping that maybe we could reinstate some of those cuts that we had made. am I understanding you to say that that would not be your recommendation until
It would not,
the middle of August?
I'd like to see what our closing looks like, yes.
Because
Which
I
would-
agree with Ms. Parker that at that point, it would be hard to reinstate some things for the coming school year.
But that results normally wouldn't get reported back to us until
Till September.
September, after the school year
Well,
started.
you could take, Dave, could you go to the PowerPoint, the spreadsheet? There's no legal reason why we have to have 934,000 put away for GASB 45 right now. That's a long-term liability. There's no real reason we have to have that 100,000 there for technology. And again, we don't know what commitments are going to come out of there as a result of our closing and first interim. But certainly those funds are available without my recommendation, however, for the board to spend.
So we're talking about 5.6 million.
I think before we all dash off into wishful thinking land, because I would like to go there too, I think, and also I acknowledge the fact that it really is that total amount, although we would be certainly open to recommendations from the business office with regard to trying to cover ourselves for future purposes. I would really like to get verification, and I think it's entirely possible to hold a special meeting in August to deal specifically with this after the books are closed.
But the books close August 15th.
August 15th.
Right.
But you don't have the information. I mean, closed is closed. It doesn't mean you've analyzed it in any way.
No. I would say we could come back to you the early part of September with some pretty good data information.
And you want to analyze this before school begins?
I
I don't know how we would do that.
I don't think you could do that. And so I think that it's
As close
there
a
might
window as
be
possible.
something like maybe we could play with $1 million.
Oh, I see what you're
You
saying.
see what I'm saying?
Well, there it is, right there.
Just put, well, and that isn't necessarily where.
Yeah, or,
Because I like the fact that you've got GASB 45 money in there.
So do I.
And I like the fact that you've already thought of a technology. And I can think of lots of places where we need replacement funds to be, like equipment and so on and so forth, that the district should be doing. But it's just that in this case, there's a lot more there than I ever thought would be. And I just don't want the school year to start without us thinking through if there's some programs that we could put in place and some teachers that we could have in place.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Noel.
Could you explain what future commitments / encroachments mean? What's buried in that?
those were future salary increases, unknown legal costs, many of the things that Ms. Parker is bringing up, sort of undesignated reserves for potential first interim report adjustments, potential adjustments that could come from our closing.
Well, but it says encroachments. I mean, legal costs don't encroach.
The special ed cost, special ed,
Will that include special ed encroachments?
that could include some special ed encroachment. Yes, it could.
And what about transportation encroachments?
Yes, it could be in there as well.
But presumably you also have those built into the regular budget. as
We
something
also
like-
have some built into the regular budget, but there's always additional costs that are unidentified. And I would say a good portion of that amount, or some portion certainly, represents an unidentified,
Mr. Diaz, when would the county be done with their review process of this?
they should be finished within about 30 days.
Okay.
Can I go back to encroachments? If I understand the concept of encroachments, it's that spending went on and on past the amount of funds available, and the general typically from a restricted fund, and the general fund has to pick it up.
That's correct, Dr. Noel.
Okay, my question is it not an alternative, as an alternative to putting money away for an encroachment for an over expenditure in an area, what about discipline on restricting the expenditures to the budgeted amount?
You're singing to the choir, Dr. Noel.
But
You're
I'm
saying-
I'm thinking in terms of what Mrs. Parker's talking about.
Making
That
it
ra-
work.
Rather than setting aside $4.6 million for unexpected encroachments, what about instituting a really tough regime that prevents encroachments in all possible cases except those that we are legally obliged to do, like special ed?
Of course, sir. And I think what the budget, this budget represents is a evolution, if you will, from prior years when we were, I don't want to characterize as previous administrations or administrators or any of the folks the fine people that have worked here in previous years, but this is a whole different approach to budgeting now. We're moving into a direction where I'm going to be coming to the board, and with all due respect to Ms. Parker and Ms. Cordero, and I know how important those programs are to our students, but I'll stand up here and say, okay, if we do this, then this is the cost. There's going to always be there'll be a cost, and there'll be expenditures and a consequence for the expenditure or benefit. So you'll have to know both the benefit and the consequence. So and I know that the board more than anyone shares the collective resolve to maintain prudent fiscal practices in the district. So I think we're all in agreement with that, Dr. Noel. I would love to be able to say, here's your budget, like I've tried to do with my daughters unsuccessfully. There's some significant encroachment at the Diaz household with two daughters in their 20s, but I held the line for a while. But yes, I agree. Here's the money you have to spend, and don't spend a penny over it. The problem I have with that philosophy, however, is it does not account for what I characterize in what's not in the budget as site realities and things that come up at the district. You would be in tough shape if you had that line in the sand, if you were drawn, and then something happened at the school that had to be fixed. Computers broke down, a server broke down, any number of things that can take place, as you folks all know much better than I here in your district. So it's important you keep the realities of our business. If we were working in if I was standing before you as a board of directors in a company that manufactured a car or even a restaurants, managing a chain of restaurants, those revenue streams and expenses are very predictable. And over time, you do accumulate appropriate reserves that are set aside, and you can almost weather just about anything in those types of environments. Our educational enterprises are so different because it's such a dynamic, moving object. We've got thousands of kids to take care of. I believe I characterized the preparation of this budget in a previous correspondence as trying to do a tune-up on a car while the engine is running. And that's a very appropriate analogy for this type of work that we do. So I would, of course, get you that information that you want as quickly as possible on how you could possibly put that money to use. And
Well, I don't see why we couldn't, in approving this budget, do so with an explicit understanding that these reserves not have names put next to them, except those that are legally required. And I would agree about GASB 45. And that they be for the board's allocation, and we could, if the board so desired, go farther and say first priority to restore some of the budget cuts, as Ms. Cordero suggests.
yes.
Because I too am kind of amazed that after going through the pain of cutting so much, all of a sudden there's all this money. And then more amazed that I don't hear it being set aside for teaching, for academic programs that serve kids.
Well, we leave that up to the board, Dr. Noel, so you're exactly correct.
But would there be any, I mean, you said that, no? Okay, so if the board decided to take this path I just suggested, that's Is there a problem with that?
There will be if you come back with a bad closing and a bad first interim, yeah.
Well, but
You'll be-
these
we'll
are
be-
all they're contingency, it's all contingency stuff in
Yeah.
any event, it's not a
Well,
commitment.
and right now, it just says future commitments. That means board direction
Yeah.
at the future. I think
Sure.
that we can approve this budget as it stands. I just would like it to come back to us before the school year starts, just looking at the future commitments and the designated reserves, and review that in August before the school year starts.
And as I appreciate your comment, Ms. Parker, and as I said earlier, I anticipate that the county will do a pretty quick review of our budget. They're pretty timely with their review. And if they come back with a positive certification and says that everything looks real good and all the expenditures are accounted for, then we'll get that report, as you know, has always been in a board brief to the board, and we'll have that, I would think, before the end of July.
Okay. Shall we move on? Are you completing your presentation of the actuals?
I was just going to finish up with the PowerPoint. There was just one slide left. Go back. I just wanted to run down again all of the things that we have in there. What the budget does include, a brief summary of it. And then we've had some discussions. I knew there would be, I anticipated discussions with regards to our ending balance and the amount of money that was available. And I only wanted to caution the board to, let's make sure that that's really there. Right now it exists in a financial system, it exists in Ed's computer, and the cash is reconciled. The cash is in the bank, however. But let's make sure after our overseers review our documentation and say, yes, that money's there, then of course you'd have a time frame to act quickly to implement things that the board would like to see happen in this current school year. But I would wait at the minimum until we heard back from the county. And then lastly, I just wanted to thank all of the people who worked so hard on this. They were here day and night, weekends. I just can't, they really put in a lot of time. Now, all these people aren't in the accounting department. These people are from all over. We pulled all hands on deck, and everybody had to show up and put in some time. And even this afternoon, a young lady who was here as a temp employee, I recruited her to help. So anyway, I thank all of them for their fine work. I thank you for your patience and understanding with our development process. We have an unwieldy system, I think, to be the most kind about it. However, the board did approve last Tuesday a contract for Castleberg and Associates to review our options going forward. So I think we're making the right moves, and I think we're headed in the right direction. And nothing would please me more than to come back to you in 30 days and say, well, you've got some money to spend. So.
Well, and I did want to ask briefly about your computer and software issues that were so difficult. Was that worse than usual? I know that you haven't been here that long to know maybe if it was worse than usual, but what do you see being better perhaps in the future?
That's a very loaded question, Ms. Parker. I will say that I'm still not familiar with this CECC system that's at San Bernardino County, and I'm not comfortable with it. It seems unwieldy. I'll tell you, the only thing that I can see positive about it at this point is Nick Sebastian, because Nick was here day and night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, helping us debug that thing, tweak the programs. I mean, the guy supported that program a lot. Now, that being said, however, had we been with the county office, I think those programs would all be operating with much less high maintenance, if you will. And so I'm anticipating that as we move throughout the year and we complete our analysis, that at some point we will consider, the board will direct me, based on information that we provide you, you'll direct me to proceed with a migration back to the county offices for administrative, financial administrative services. However, just so you know, I've been through several of these major migrations before, is what I refer to them as, and they take a couple of years. You don't do everything all at once. Typically, you move your payroll in January because as employees operate on a calendar year, and then the next thing to go after payroll would probably be accounts payable, and then general ledger, et cetera, et cetera. So it would be a timely process, but I believe in the long term, it would yield us significant savings, as the board cover for that item suggested a couple of weeks ago.
I think we're a little far afield. While I realize it pertains to the actuals in the budget, that actual
But
discussion
we're
of the
kinda
shift
getting
to
off.
county
Yes,
is,
ma'am.
yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. So those were the actuals. And did you want to walk us through this budget document?
Actually, I had them combined. If you
Okay.
notice, the two columns were, one was estimated actual, and the next column were the budget on all of those sheets.
Okay, thank you.
So may I make
Any
a motion?
question? Oh, okay.
Or you have a question?
No, I think there might be other board
We're
questions.
talking about adopting this already?
Well, we would need to approve the budget and adopt the actuals. So if you have more questions, go
Well,
ahead.
I have a lot of questions.
It's one document. It's just one document, but it's labeled in the state code as 0607 estimated actuals and budget for adoption. So it's not two documents, it's one.
This is the first time the budget's been on the action agenda, correct?
As far as I know,
Yeah. So this is the first time that board members have an opportunity to actually make motions about specific or general changes in the budget. What I find frustrating is that at this first opportunity where I, as a board member, can propose changes in my idea of priorities, reflecting what I read in my constituents want, everything is buried. We're not being presented with the choices. You're telling us that staff has done all of this, and presenting it. So it's a package, the contents of which are only partially known, that we are being asked to adopt. I spent some time today going through this document and some other documents that you gave me, looking for specific things that I would like to cut or propose cutting. I don't know that my colleagues would support it. For example, travel and conference. I see in the budget $364,000 and $677 of restricted funds budgeted for the coming year, and $74,223 in unrestricted funds. I would like to have an opportunity to make proposals about that, and to put them to a vote. Consulting services. I see in the projected budget $4,511,324 of restricted funds being used for consulting services. 4.5 million. 1.6 million of unrestricted funds being used for consulting services. I think that warrants discussion and some reflection on priorities.
And Dr. Renaud, all of those all of those agreements to which you refer, the consulting agreements, those all have been before the board, and many of them relate to the larger.
But we've never seen $1.6 million.
Well, because they come
it's
30,000 at a
part-whole
time.
problem.
Yeah,
It's a
they come
classic
30.
problem. Parts
yeah,
and wholes, right?
Yeah, they come
Now we're looking at the
30,000 at a
whole.
time.
Then we see the parts, and we see them sequentially and disjointed with no cumulative
Mm-hmm.
impact. here's the cumulative impact. And that's a different perspective, that it's a terribly important one at this particular time.
Well, I think the board
Let me, if I may.
Sure.
Expenses for the Board of Education. Object Code 5810, contracted services, $57,998. I think I did add them together. 5810, the total between high school and elementary school, $112,711 that the board is spending, as I read these documents you gave me, for contracted services. I would like to understand that better, and I'd like to suggest a different set of priorities. 5820, legal expenses. The board is budgeted for $259,375 in legal expenses. I don't know what that means. I know the board has to have attorneys when it is being sued, and it has to have attorneys on a number of occasions, in expulsion cases and so on. And I have no way of knowing whether that item reflects those expenditures or what other expenditures. And I care about that, because that's a lot of money for lawyers. I love lawyers. Transportation expense. I calculate, based on the data you gave me, I calculate a $264,355 encroachment to the general fund the past year for transportation, for home to school transportation, not special ed. I understand that. That's sacrosanct. We can't mess with that. But we can rethink what we're doing about spending that kind of general fund money on transportation. And what I'm saying is that I'm not going to try to hold up this meeting by running down a list of amendments to the proposal to adopt, because my sense is that will antagonize my colleagues, and I'll have a hard time getting seconds. But I'd hate to be in this position. I feel that I cannot fulfill my responsibilities as a representative of the public and as a trustee over the public's finances with this way of presenting a budget, let alone presenting it at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon.
Well, all I can tell you, it represents the best effort we had with the time available and the staff we had to do it and the system we had to work with.
So the budget is built based on sort of the realities of prior years. Is
Correct.
that correct?
Yes.
So any board member who has had possession of a budget over a number of years could always have looked through and said, gosh, that number seems high, and asked for a report on it.
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, that's what I would hope, that if any one of us thinks that maybe we're spending too much on transportation, that we could get a detailed report on why we spend that amount, and then maybe we can come back and say that's too much. But it doesn't need to happen at this very meeting, does it?
No.
I mean, that's something that could happen any time during the year. We could look at it.
Well, my intent would be, as we move through the process of accessing the web reports by our administrators and staff, I don't see why the board would not have that same access to be able to search and query.
Would you like to be the one who asks to have an agenda item put back on the agenda, or on the agenda sometime in this coming year, to reset budget priorities and remake all these figures after the school year started?
Well, I think that there are times when there are legal requirements for when a budget has to be passed. But whenever we raise a question, I don't think we ever should have to wait to deal with it. So if you have a question now.
Ms. Parker, it's raising a question in a context when you can do action. Every time we have had a budget presentation, it has been on the conference agenda, and we have not been presented with enough information to even do this kind of thing, okay, to identify these things. So we've not been in a position to make motions, to put things to votes. That's why I started my comments by saying, this is the only time in the last 12 months that we have had this on the action agenda. And yet, action is precluded by the deadline, I mean, I recognize if I'm proposing a cut, there are implications of that, and it requires more information. At 6:22 on the 29th of June, I can't get that information.
You don't have to.
And I'm asking, and it would be inappropriate for me to ask my colleagues to vote on such a thing without that information.
But I still feel like if we had, when we were looking at, say, the $2.5 million in cuts in April, that if any one of us, we were looking through last year's budget, we were looking through the first and second interim updates, as we were looking through those things, we could have seen areas of concern. We can find all this out, and thank you, because you do respond and give us information. And we could have asked for a board brief on it, and then asked for it to be on the agenda at any time. And I feel like we could do that right now and ask for a board brief on, let's say, transportation costs, although Dr. Noel has raised concerns about a number of areas, and gone deeper into an analysis, although I also truly feel that that is the business services job and not the job of a board member to do this kind of line-by-line analysis. We are not accountants. But certainly you can raise questions about it and have that report brought back to us.
Well, Ms. Parker, you know, that this list that was presented at the meeting on which we cut 2.5 million did not include these options I'm talking about.
Ms.
Again,
Craig-
we were presented with a menu, and it was like, work from this menu. Getting other things on the menu. In fact, I did propose at some of the prior meetings, I did ask to have some of these things on the menu, and they weren't on there. And I have no control over that. But that, again, it's the same problem. The decision-making is structured in such a way as to make genuine participation and setting priorities very difficult. Staff sets the priorities. They're reflected in the way these things are structured. And I object to that.
Ms. Cordero?
Well, I feel a little bit like Mr. Diaz is under attack, and I actually want to compliment you on the quality of the information that you did give us. I think this is actually much more complete and much more understandable than some of the processes that we've had in the past. And I also think it's a bit disingenuous to suggest that as a board member, the only time we can ask questions or make recommendations is when something is on the agenda, the action agenda. I think probably all of us as board members, and including Dr. Noel, have raised many questions when things have been on conference agenda. We have we have given staff direction. We have raised questions even when things have been presented to us in board brief. We have, as Dr. Noel pointed out, he went to you and got some additional information. We can do that at any time, any day of the year. It does not have to be when something is on the action agenda, and all of us are very much aware of that, and I think all of us have actually done it. So to suggest that we have to wait until something is on the action agenda and that we're sort of subject to the whims of staff, I actually think is a bit disingenuous.
I take exception to that, Mrs. Cordero.
I'm not surprised.
There's nothing disingenuous about it. We have on the conference agenda we've had a series of them, budget reductions. Some of them haven't started till 10:30 at night. One would like to think that the process would be structured in such a way that there could be some public input at the same time as board members have an opportunity to make motions. The implication of what you're saying is that board members can make motions ad hoc, disjointed, unconnected to anything else, in a rational budget process.
Dr. Noel, I think
I
think you absolutely know that that is not what I'm saying.
That's what you said. You were saying, go ahead, do it, every time it's been on the conference agenda.
If I
There's no
could,
coherence to that,
if
and
I
we
could-
don't have this document.
if I could interject at some point, not that this is a solution to all the ills, but we have talked for some time about a budget committee. And I believe we are going to try and have that discussion in August. That was my request specifically, to have it in August to start out the school year. And I think that the issues that you're raising tonight, Dr. Noel, are specifically the mission of a budget committee, to raise those kinds of items, to investigate them, to get the kind of detail that you're talking about, and then the ones that really look like they hold promise, to bring them back to the full board, you know, to be, you know, in essence, running a finance committee in the same way that the city council does with staff and board representation. And it may end up being very different, but I do think that we should have the discussion. And we express this kind of frustration year in and year out with the budget process, and that is the only way that I can see clear to not having this kind of not only headbutting amongst board members, but just headbutting with the figures. How can we do this in a better way?
Headbutting with the clock.
Headbutting with the clock as well. Indeed, sir, indeed. Ms. Parker?
Actually, I was just going to bring up the Budget Committee, too, because that is exactly where I think that we need to go with this.
And I've done some preliminary work at President Harder's direction already on putting some things for a
But of
budget
course-
advisory committee.
Of course, the Budget Committee then moves it one step away, and from my point of view, would it afford me an opportunity to make motions there? Same question,
If you were
different
on the
venue.
committee, but.
And if I'm not on the committee,
But that is a discussion that we will have in August, whether we even do it and how it would be comprised. And those would be appropriate questions.
And I heard one of the board members mention similar to the city's finance department. And there's 41 people in that department.
No, their committee.
Oh,
Committee.
oh,
Yeah,
in
not
their finance department,
No,
there's
I know that they have a
41
great deal more staff than we do.
people. No, I'm not jealous at all. I'm just
Okay.
stating a fact. I'm
Well-
very happy to work with the fine people that we have here.
In any case, here we are, 6:30 on June 29th, Friday afternoon.
dinner reservations in a
Ooh,
few minutes.
okay, well,
May
Uh,
I make a motion?
certainly, I didn't know if anyone had any other questions about the larger document as opposed to the review
they were answered,
that Mr. Diaz has walked us through. Questions, comments? Okay,
I move to adopt the 06-07 estimated actuals and 07-08 budget.
Second.
I'd be much more comfortable if you would simply use the wording of the item, which is adopt the actuals, approve the budget.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Where's the- I move to approve the 07-08 budget and
Adopt.
adopt the
Yeah.
06-07 estimated actuals.
I'll
It's
second.
approval for adoption, whatever, okay.
I move to bifurcate the vote.
Oh, that's fine. Does the mover and the seconder agree to have two separate votes?
That's fine with me.
Okay. In what order, Dr. Noel?
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Okay. Does somebody wish to make a motion?
I move to adopt the 06-07 estimated actuals.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ms. Cordero. So moved by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Cordero. All those in favor of adopting the estimated actuals signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. So it carries 5-0. Now a motion on the 07-08 budget.
Move to adopt the 07-08 budget.
Whatever, okay.
Approve for adoption.
Second.
Thank you. So a motion by Ms. Parker, second by Ms. Cordero, to approve the 07-08 budget. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against?
I'm abstaining, please.
Okay, thank you, sir. So it's 4-0 with one abstention by Dr. Noel. And I believe that brings us to the conclusion of our business this early evening. Thank you all very much.